Very, very happy to have the man himself, Mr. Ryan Bensen, back due to how many of you guys have massively, massively benefited from our last conversation. So here is the man himself who's already saved you guys, hopefully, a fair bit of headache with your ladies. So, Ryan, it's Christmas. It's been a long year. What would you say has been like the biggest thing for you, like achievement-wise, this year?
I'm not sure. There's been so much going on in 2022 that it's been very hectic. The last few months have been especially busy with just general practice, and we've had. I mean, I feel like my family might be cursed or something because it's been like family emergency, and then another family emergency, and then another family emergency, and then a relative just died a couple days ago. And I'm at the point, if there's like a spirit healer that's listening right now, if you want to come over to my house and burn some sage, let's do it, baby, because I want to be ready for 2023.
Well, you definitely are ready. I mean, you're always ready, and it's interesting. I think this is actually a pretty good topic. I mean, obviously, firstly, condolences for the family member, obviously.
Thank you.
And of course, me and the girlfriend will be praying for you guys today. But I think this is a really interesting topic because you and I have certainly, to some degree, had so many different things happening all at once, and they all amalgamate, right? Like things that go really, really well for a little bit of time, and then all of a sudden it's just okay. Now you have to pay for that piece. So how do you deal with it when there's, and I think I know your answer to this already, but how do you deal with all of the pressure? Because, you've got family, you've got obviously the business side of things, you've got then the investments, you've got all of these different things all going on at once. And then even on top of that, it's Christmas. So how have you been dealing with that as a man and as a father, I guess?
I think it's a way of how you view problems, right? So traditionally, when we're brought up, we see problems and we're seeking solutions, I guess, right? Because it's a very problem solution. Problems are bad, solutions are good, right? And that's how we've been raised from a young age. And that's a useful framework to a certain point, but it only really gets you to average because when you're living a life that is more chaotic, you're going to have a lot of problems. And that's going to be very stressful because all you're going to see everywhere you look are problems, and it's going to drag you down, right?
Yep.
I look at it a little bit differently now, and it's taken me, I don't know, 6 years, 7 years to go through the process of switching problems into opportunities and solutions as the fun part, right? So I view problems as something to like and enjoy because I go, oh, cool, I have something new that's interesting for me to solve. Maybe it's stressful, maybe it's an issue that needs to be addressed. Most of the time I look at myself and I go, okay, I only have so many hours in the day. What do I need to do? Like really need to do?
Yeah.
What's important to me? And when you have all this kind of stuff all over the place, I find times when you're going through challenges to be very helpful because it helps you to focus and lock in where you really want to go. It has a way of sort of distilling where your mindset is. We experienced that we had one family member who was quite sick, and then my son got very, very sick and ended up needing surgery.
Oh, wow.
And what you realize when you go through this process is that, I mean, obviously you're quite concerned about the other family member because it's somebody who's, quite important to us. But then when your son gets sick, you go, oh, this is different. Like none of this other stuff matters. I care about this, right? So then you focus on that. And then when that gets resolved, then you can start to look at all the other pieces of the puzzle and start to put everything back into place.
Yeah. It's definitely a kind of a degree of, what's even the word for this? just having things on kind of like a tiered level of importance, I suppose, because it's very chaotic, especially when you're living the kind of lives that we are, and trying to get all of these moving pieces. Because I think a good analogy is it's like trying to put together a jigsaw puzzle when the pieces are like a Schrodinger's cat. Like you go for one piece and then all of a sudden it's not there, and then the jigsaw's also moving at the same time.
Mhm.
And it's focusing, I guess, on one piece at a time, but looking at it. Do you kind of look at it from levels of importance of, say, I have family as number one, then business as number two, or prioritization in some kind of form or degree, or do you just deal with it kind of on the spot?
There's the musts that need to be accomplished. So on a given day, there's a must to spend some time with family, ideally. So I'll make sure that I block off at least a little bit of time to do that with the kids. There's a must to take care of my relationships, my personal relationship with my wife, etc. There's family, and then there's business, and then there's personal, right? So in a given day, I have to make sure that I'm doing something physical. Otherwise, I get a little bit squirrely. On a given day, I want to make sure I spend some time with the kids. On a given day, there's family and interpersonal relationships, and then there's work and there's business. So it's just a balancing act between everything. And often it's maybe I can combine them, right? So I'll take my son to come and work out with me. He's 5. He likes it. He'll come with me. He asks me questions about things. We talk back and forth about life and other important subjects while we're working out. He has a good time. I have a good time. Everybody's happy. And I feel like I've done something that's valuable, right? That is uplifting. Then I get home, then it's, let's get to work. What are the things that I really need to accomplish today? And let's get cracking at it, right? And then it's any other issues throughout the day that may arise.
Deal with them. Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people they deal with things on a sort of individualistic approach, rather than going down the route that you just said about sort of hitting two birds with one stone. Because everyone's got 24 hours. Everyone's got 24 hours, and it's like everyone's like, oh, I don't have enough time to do this and to do. Yeah, you do. I think a lot of people don't see the different angles of attack and the kind of attack vectors that they can really just take to get. Oh, okay, so I'm going to a business meeting. When can I get some time in for? I don't know, like when can I read a book, for example, or when can I learn? Okay, listen to it maybe in the gym, or listen to it or read it when you're on the train or whatever, if you have to go on a train or on a plane. So is there anything that you do kind of specifically to look and outline the targets of or the vectors of attack, or do you just kind of you're just like, oh, okay, well, I'm doing that thing. Well, that's easy. Okay, he comes with me, and then it's just done, easy, like that.
Yeah, that's a pretty easy one with the working out and spending time with the kids. That part's more simple to me. I do. It sounds kind of woo-woo, but it's not. I manage my energy throughout the day. I think we talked last time. I don't really sleep that much. I sleep like 4, maybe 5 hours a night, right? So I notice that throughout the day there'll be sort of peaks and troughs of where my energy level's at, right? Yeah. And during the peaks, when it's higher energy, I can dive into really more complex work. And when it's in the troughs, I kind of have to look at using my brain differently. So I'll try to switch off, the more intense level work, and I'll flip to some other stuff that's a little bit easier. While my brain's processing the difficult things here, I'm doing simple stuff over here and knocking some things off my list. That one, right? And then when my energy picks back up again, I flip back and I'm back over here into complex world where I can dive in deeper.
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at things. I see definitely, even myself, I still do this. Sometimes I just try and just brute force my way through some kind of creative idea or something that I've got going on. And I'm just trying to like brute force myself through it, but you can't, because your brain needs that leeway, I guess. It kind of needs a small little runway. It's like a 747 can't take off on a really small runway, but a smaller plane could, so those bigger problems, looking at where can you fit those in, and then the smaller ones. Okay, cool. We have a small runway of brain energy right now. Let's focus on those ones. And that makes a lot of sense. I need to implement that actually a lot more into my life.
It's hard because I fought through that too, Michael. Like I fought that through when I was younger, where you'd think that you could push, right? And that's sort of the incentive that you get, and you're taught that as a kid, that just push through, just try harder, and all that kind of stuff. It might be okay for running, but it's not really going to work for your brain, and you need to play off the two sides, right? And I mean, I can't tell you the number of times where maybe it's 11 o'clock at night or midnight, and I go, "Ugh, I'm pooped," and I got to call it a night. I go to bed, and I'll solve something while I'm sleeping and wake up at 3 and go and do it. And that's just how it works.
It's so important because, and I was having this conversation with a few of the students actually, just I think it was yesterday, because within the 24 hours that we have, a lot of that time, for most people anyway, or at least the vast majority of people, a lot of that time is spent sleeping, but they're not consciously sleeping. Do you like lucid dream or anything like that? Or is it just your brain just is kind of like mine and just continues to solve problems when you're sleeping?
It depends. I tend to be a problem solver if I'm sleeping, just because it's probably because I work late and I'll be working, and then I go, oh, time to hit the lights, and I'll fall asleep, but my brain is still processing, right? So it's trying to maneuver the data or maneuver the information in a way that I can actually make it make sense, because that tends to be the more complex end of things. It's not really understanding what's going on. It's being able to communicate it in a way that makes sense to people, right? Yeah. So I think it's probably because of the sleep and the fact that I'm working right before that I'm busy problem solving at night.
Yeah, it's one of the funniest things actually that my girlfriend, well, not just this one, but many have told me when I've been sleeping and I've been like counting with my fingers. I've been like 1, 2, 3. They're like, what are you doing? I'm KO. I'm completely knocked out, and in my head, I'm still moving and counting my hands like I'm possessed or something, which is it's funny. It's funny, but it just doubles your lifespan in a way, because and it kind of comes down to who was it? Einstein, where he said, unless you can explain something to a complicated process to a 6-year-old, then you don't understand it well enough. And I think so many people think they understand things, but they just don't, because they haven't even given themselves time to kind of process things. And I think that's, especially as a man, a lot of growth, like personal growth, that's where it happens, right? So in these kinds of situations that you and I are having and have had in the past, and sure as hell are definitely going to come back, it's being able to, once I guess you've got the jigsaw kind of at least a little bit still, and you've dealt with the pieces that you have to then really kind of just take a step back and look at what's just happened, and then just process like, man, how did that really affect me? How did I react? What could I have done better? These are all kind of things that I do pretty much daily, I would say, especially before I go to sleep. I'm like, what the fuck did I actually do? Do you have any kind of like rituals like that at all?
Like an introspection process?
Yeah, like an introspective process where you look back at either something that you've been going through, dealing with, that's been tough on you, spiritually, let's say, or emotionally, or even if it's just something like daily, just sitting down and being able to say to yourself, okay, cool. So I've done all of these things today, and then just looking back at it introspectively in such a way to, I guess, develop or understand yourself a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, there's a process, right? So for the people watching this, I mean, I think the most important element of your day is the reflective part, where you have, even if it's a minute or two, a chance to look back and say, you know, where are the ways that I could have improved my day today, right? Yeah. And how could I have done that? For a lot of people, there's a lot of dead time during the day. There's driving, there's commutes, there's time when they just sit on their phone and they're scrolling Twitter or something, watching Rumble videos. Hopefully this one is at least useful, but there's a lot of dead time there, right? That can be used differently. So I tend to look back and I try to control my time. So where are the ways that I can improve that? How have I managed my mood throughout the day? Because that's important. I generally want to stay good. I don't have to be great, but I don't want to be bad, right? So even music choices, TV, if I ever watch it, that's a choice. Movies, if I ever watch it, which again is quite rare, I'm very selective with what I choose. I don't listen to sad music. I don't watch sad shows. I don't watch sad movies. I don't want to. It's not for me. If it's music, it's something just to get me re-energized. Sometimes I'll pick like mariachi music or something crazy just to give my brain a little bit of a workout while I'm doing some work, and it'll pick me up a bit, you know, whatever.
Okay, that's interesting, because I'm very, very similar in that degree. I don't want anything in my brain that shouldn't be there, and especially if it's evokes kind of like an emotional response, then I definitely want it fucking there, because I want to be in control of my emotions. Music's a really good one. I mean, mariachi music's interesting because that your brain is then going to be like, hold on a second, this is a bit different especially for a lot of people. But what I really, really, really like to do, music-wise, if I'm finding that my brain is just all over the place, I've been dealing with too many things, I'll just turn on classical. It has to be classical for me. Just take that nice couple of minutes okay, let's just lower the white noise, quieten it at least to some degree. What kind of music would you say is like the best for you to quiet your white noise?
Classical is great too. It depends. It depends on if your energy is high or your energy is low, right? So I use mariachi as a bit of a pick-me-up. I'll throw that on and it'll just, for some reason, I just get a little bit of a spark off of it. And it's creative and it's weird and it's different. My wife thinks I'm crazy, but you know, whatever. I don't pay attention to that. And I have some fun and get some work done. So that's exciting for me and I enjoy it. Classical is a great one too. That would be more of something that would pull me down if I'm higher energy. That's going to pull me down into a more functional working space. So that would be the flip side of the coin to mariachi to me.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. It's funny as well when you said about your wife thinking that you're crazy, because I think everyone from the outside to some degree has to look at us like we're absolutely fucking just insane, because there's normally they can't see a reason, right? Like why do all of this shit in the first place? Why go to the gym? Why become just the best version of yourself? A lot of people it doesn't really enter their head, right? I think a lot of those people now, they're kind of just lost, I think, to some degree. Do you kind of think the same? Do you think that those kinds of people you could help or sort of try to help?
Depends on the person. It's going to depend on their motivations too, right? Like there's a question that I often use, which is, if you were to win the lottery today, what would you do tomorrow? right? And I'll ask that, I'll put that to people. And some people will say, I'll retire and I'll move to Florida and I'll fish or surf or whatever and do nothing and sit on the beach and drink margaritas. Okay, cool. So you're in the work to live compartment, right? You're working to pay bills and get the weekends off and get the evenings off. So that's where you go sort of on the spectrum of your working life career. Then there's the other people like me who go nothing. Like if I won the lottery tomorrow, that doesn't really change anything. Maybe I'd buy a house in a nicer spot, and beyond that, I'd be doing what I do, just in a different location, maybe. But same difference to me, right? So those are more in the I'm no longer working to live. I'm living because I actually really enjoy the work that I do, and I want to keep doing it, and I want to keep finding ways to do it better, right? Which is why they call professional businesses, they call them practices, because you're practicing and you're getting better and you're doing this feedback loop of constant improvement. And that's very much how I design and curate my life choices is a feedback loop. I just want to do things better every day. And to pull back to that reflective question earlier, you have to assess it sometime, right? And sometimes it's right on the spot where you kind of go, oh shit, I could have done that better. Often with kids, definitely, because they throw things at you. They'll throw questions at you and you kind of go, go away, right? And that's not the right response. It's better to deal with it hands-on. So if you're stressed, sometimes you'll do something wrong and then you go, should have done that better. Now I know how to improve it next time and how to address that.
Yeah. Because in that kind of a case, I see what most people do seems to be the opposite. It's like they'll catch themselves doing something, or they would have done something as well. Like they kind of catch themselves doing that bad thing, and then they just focus on, oh shit, I completely fucked up this whole thing. I messed it up. Do you hold on to the feeling or the mistake or guilt yourself out, or do you just say, oh, okay, could have kind of done that better? Or what's your go-to when that happens?
Guilt, shame, angst, anger, frustration are all reflections of you knowing that you did something wrong and not being willing to change how you're going to do it in the future. So anytime that you're sitting, let's say if you're watching this and you're sitting at home and you go, I'm feeling very frustrated, right? I'm frustrated with life. I'm frustrated with what I'm doing. I don't like it. I know I should be doing something differently, or I know I should be living my life differently, but I'm not, right? And that's where that frustration comes from, because you're making a mistake. You know that there's a problem. You probably know in the back of your head that's there's a solution there that you could take, but maybe you're just not brave enough at this point to take that step to the next level, right? And that's where that frustration comes from. So no, for me, I view all of my challenges, all of my opportunities as a focal point for growth. I take responsibility for everything that happens under my purview. And by taking ownership, you go, oh, I screwed up. Shit happens. Here's how I'm going to do it differently next time. It's like that thing where you go, have you made any mistakes in your life, right? And you go, yeah, I mean, I guess I've had some missteps, right? But I've learned from them and I'm successful now. And that's what got me here. Do I have regrets? No, I don't have regrets. Look at how things have turned out. Things have turned out very nicely. I have a great family and a great life, etc. I'm very happy about that. So I don't have regrets. Sure, I've made some missteps and sometimes you fuck things up from time to time. And that's okay because you learn from it and you move on. Make the changes.
Yeah, 100%. Because it's the people that live in the past are the people that normally are sad. They have no kind of motivation or inspiration for even that day, let alone the future. because they're trying to hold on to something in the past. I think, have you heard that phrase? The person who is living in the past is living in sorrow. The person who's living in the future is living in or with anxiety, or rather, it's the opposite. The person with anxiety is living in the future. The person with sorrow and guilt is living in the past, and the person who is living in the present is living.
Interesting. I must be highly anxious because I often find myself living in the future.
Well, we need to check our heart rates out a little bit. We need to check every once in a while. But I think it's people looking in the future in more of like a fearful sense. Like we look into the future because we're like, okay, how can I plan and how can I reverse engineer tomorrow to be better than today to so much degree, or next year, or something like that. But I guess it really comes down to perception, really, right? Like,
where I see this quote stand out is with kids, right? When you have kids, you have this, small little baby. Wow, this is so cool. I like this. I like this. I like this baby. He's cool. She's cool, whatever. And then you think to yourself, I really like this. I'm not sure I really want this to change, right? And then they grow up a little bit. And you go, oh, I like this more. They're way more interesting. They do more fun stuff. You lose the cute baby thing for a bit. And that's okay, right? So you lose that, but you gain other things. And you go, okay, I like this now. Okay, here, I want to leave it here at 2 years old, right? Where they're walking around and they're being fairly sweet and easy to deal with at that point. Then they turn 3 and you go, oh, 3 is perfect. This is amazing, right? And you go through this process and you realize as a parent and as a father that all the ages as they go through are just getting better and better. So why would I be reminiscent about the past and be living in it when you recognize the fact that the future is really amazing and you get to see this growth arc and help to lead it for your children down that way to a positive future. So for me, it's exciting, right? So I can see why people would be really depressed if they're thinking in the past, because it's just reminiscing to old times that are gone and you're not enjoying the present moment. I live mostly in the future, but I do get, someone gave me a quote or a turn of phrase, and it was like fragments of perfection, let's say, where you're sitting in the right spot at the right time, doing the right thing, and you just have that, could be 20 seconds or it could be 20 minutes, whatever, that moment where you're doing the right thing at the right time and you're watching the right thing, your kids or work or whatever the case may be. You go, I've made it. This is it. I've done it. I know I've done it. And then you jump back into the future and you look ahead, right? Because it's exciting.
Yeah. I cannot tell you the amount of times when that's happened, where I've just sat there, I'm like, fucking yes, here we go. Well done, me. But it's just 20 seconds. It's like, for example, I don't know if I've ever shared the story about this Cartier, but I wanted this watch since I was like 16 or something. I buy it and I'm just elated for like 5 minutes. And then I'm just like, okay, cool. Well, I've got to go walk my dog now and everything. But it's then, okay, cool. There has to be something else now. And now it's, a Cartier with diamonds on. And then it's going to be a Cartier with diamonds on. Okay, cool. Well, I need now one which has, but it's all like, those are the things I think that people, like the materialistic aspect of life. It is, I think it's important. I think a lot of people minimize it a hell of a lot, because I would prefer very much to be in a nice, well lit home with different types of lights for different moods and stuff like that, which is large and has different rooms to do different things and keep that energy just separate from each room, rather than living in a single bed apartment with my girl, and having to sleep on a mattress. It's those are the important things initially, but I think there comes a level where the materialistic stuff, it doesn't bring you as much happiness anymore, especially with money. It's like, have you seen that study which is it says, paraphrasing, but something along the lines of, after about 70,000 US a year, or equivalent in local currency, the happiness that you get from earning money just flatlines. Have you seen that one?
I haven't read the study itself. I've seen the headline on it for sure. It would have been like 3 or 4 years ago, I think.
Yeah, it was like within the past 3 to 5 years for sure. But do you think that that's true to you, or do you? Because I'm interested, because I disagree with it.
You do. You disagree with it.
Because I just don't think there's any level of happiness when it comes to money that really is going to make me happy. I really don't.
There's not, there's a path, right? So when you're looking at money and you're trying to figure out, when does it start making me happy? When does it stop making me happy? There's a path. When you're 20 years old, you go, oh, I wish I could make 50K a year, because 50K seems like a lot of money, right? Because you have none when you're 20. Let's say you're at university and you're making 10K a year doing a part-time job to try to pay the bills. So you say 50,000 is the target. And when you're 20, 50,000 is a lot of money, just as a general worker. And then when you're 25, maybe it's 55 or 60,000. And when you're 30, you say it's 65 or 70. And that's probably at that point, if you're in a dual income household, where you can start to afford little toys and little luxuries like a vacation, a trip away to Disney, having kids and being able to afford daycare. There's like little perks that come along with the process, right? And I think for most people, for 90% of people, that growth pretty much stops there.
Yeah.
Because they lose the purpose of having money in the first place. And money isn't there to sit in a bank account. It's not there to buy expensive wine. It's not there just to waste. It's there to give you and your family eventually opportunity and freedom to live life the way that you want to, right? And when you start to view it that way, the materialism goes away a little bit. I mean, it's nice to have a nice car. It's nice to have these things, but is it that much of a value add to have a second nice car or a third nice car? Unless you're anchoring it to something, right? So I have a tag watch. It's not particularly fancy, but when my dad turned 50, myself, my brother, and my mom went to some jeweler and bought him a tag watch, signifying, his career and the fact that he turned 50. So I set a goal maybe 2 years ago. I said, when I hit this amount of revenue, I'm going to buy a tag watch, right? And it signified two things to me. One, every time I look at my wrist, I still wear it because I love it. Every time I look at my wrist, it's a constant reminder and check-in that I've made a certain level of success and I can afford nicer things, right? Secondarily, it reminds me of purpose and my lineage coming from my father, and what it took for him to get to a spot to give me the opportunities that I've had, and a purpose to work harder to give those same opportunities or better ones to my children, right? And to train them up for it. So I like anchoring purchases, suits, watches, pens, wallets, even, are all these little things as a man that you can buy and keep for a long period of time that remind you of who you are. It takes you back to a moment, if you've done it right, where you feel like you've made it, you've had that fragment of perfection for that moment where you're in the right spot at the right time. And every time you use that pen, every time you use a desk that you bought specially,
Yeah.
Every time you check your wrist, these are little reminders to yourself throughout the day that, okay, I'm actually successful. I'm doing what I should be doing, and I can keep pushing forward now.
Mm-hmm. I 100% agree with all of that. It's because a lot of younger guys who are out there watching this, a lot of you guys spend your money on just it's just shit, really. It's like going out to the clubs, trying to impress, this one chick that they've never met, or even worse, signing up to some chick's OnlyFans accounts and then tipping them, and like it's just money that's just bled away, right? It's like I have I don't know where it is. It must be in my coat jacket. I have a fair few nice pens. Like I love my pens. I've got my Mont Blanc. I just bought another one for one of the guys, just because I know that he's always going to use it. And like, because once you get a really, really nice thing that you can use it every day, and you can see it as, the way I kind of look at it now is, it's all just reminders to be grateful of myself and the previous work that I put in. And I think that for me, like, I catch myself every once in a while. I'll be writing something, Ryan. I'll be writing something, or signing a what do you call them? A receipt with my Mont Blanc pen. And every time it happens, even now, it's like, oh yeah, I forgot about this. And it's so nice. It's so nice just to have those little reminders, because we're all just busy, and we're always busy. So sometimes you kind of begin to question, wait, am I even, like, I'm looking over here at this person, or looking over here at this person, and you're like, well, this person's wildly more successful than I am. And then you can see those little objects, or those little things that you've got, or maybe it's just designed or custom made, or just anything. You look at that thing and you're like, oh yeah, that's nice.
Yeah,
I did well. What's the smallest thing that you have other than the tag? What's like another small reminder that you use most days or some days?
I have a big reminder. I'm not at the right spot to show you, but
I don't know if that was an innuendo.
No, it wasn't. I'm talking about a desk. So I have it's called a partner's desk, which is similar to what you'd see in like the White House. Only in the White House they put the eagle on the one side. A partner's desk usually has two sides, but they modified the one in the White House, which I think is called the Resolute desk, if I'm not mistaken. So I have a partner's desk, and here's the fun twist of it. So it was made for a guy who was the mayor of Guelph, Ontario, which is a small town. It's actually where I went to university, my undergrad, in Guelph, Ontario. And it was made for the mayor back in the 1800s. And it's this huge desk with the leather top and the wood. It's antique, right? And what was the guy's name? John Galt, as in like the Atlas Shrugged. He was the mayor of Guelph. So John Galt was the mayor of Guelph who wrote to my wife's great grandfather to move to Canada, move to Guelph, and work at building that city, because he was a fairly well-renowned stonemason in the United States. So John Galt, the person who has this desk or had this desk, would have written a letter to my wife's great something or other grandfather to move to Canada. And that would have, that basically made our marriage a possibility, because we actually met in Guelph, of all places. She went to Guelph too.
That's
so
crazy.
yeah. So that's another thing that I use daily, where you kind of go, oh, there's lineage and something, really special to this. And it's got cigar burns on it from when it was used before, and little, stains and this and that. And I love it.
Yeah. Because it's about the story as well, like the story behind something. It comes down to what do you think that comes down to actually? Because I've got a few different ideas as to why I think the story behind something is so important. Why do you think the stories are so important?
What do you think? I'm going to turn around on you. What's your
Yeah.
theory?
So I have a few things. I think inanimate objects themselves are inanimate. They're not living. They don't move. It's like I have this this coral here. It's inanimate. It doesn't move, and it doesn't hold any. Like it's a thing. It's a thing. It's just a thing that's there. But if I bring it to life through the story, which I can do, which is that I saw this specific painting that was done by a pretty famous local, painter. But I then went to go and meet him to figure out how he paints, because I also paint. And I said to him, you know, I loved this specific coral paintings that you've done. And I was wondering, you know, how you did it, what kind of commissions that you do, if you even do it. And we just got speaking to one another. He explained, oh no, he's actually a sculptor as well. And he works normally with porcelain and so on and so forth. And we sat down and we created these two corals from the painting, because, you know, the coral had so many different meanings. It goes with my house. My house is all like white, blue, and gray for Santorini, which is a whole another story. But it's the story that makes something have meaning and have it kind of places emotion into something which is otherwise inanimate, which is why I think storytelling is beautiful.
I agree with all that. I'm in on that. It's interesting though, because the story itself it's an elitist thing to do. Mm-hmm. And it's a sign of, I have something special and you can't have it, right? And I don't mean that in a negative way, but what you're doing by having a story attached to something is that you're giving it an intangible value. So you have the tangible value of the coral sculpture, yeah. But the story adds an extra panache to it, right? It adds an extra sparkle of interest. And it's especially important because nobody can have that story, right?
Yes.
So
that's very true.
The watch
that's
thing.
Very true. I've never thought about you just rocks my brain for a second there with that. Anyone else could have an object, mm-hmm. but no one can have the story that you have behind that. It's kind of the same thing with art, I suppose.
It's exactly the same thing with art.
Yeah. It's a painting can say 1,000 different things, but it's only going to be which person feels that X thing the most, that will buy it and genuinely appreciate it and look at it. Because you have a few paintings, don't you?
Yes. Yeah. Quite a few. Not on display.
What's your favorite one and why? What's the story behind it?
I like the one, if you watched the last interview with us, I like that one in my office. It's interesting and it's fun and unique. And I call it the Kardashian because it's, a girl with a big butt and it's very colorful. And it's abstract, which is, it's fun and it's interesting and it's eccentric, right? That painting itself was a gift from my father, and it was done by a somewhat well-known Canadian painter in Canada, and he had bought it at auction, I don't know, 15 years ago or something. But he had given that to me maybe 6 months before he died. He was sick, he had cancer, and didn't know about it until sort of end stage. But he had given that to me maybe 6 months before he died, and therefore it has a little bit of extra weight on it in my spectrum of emotion. But I like things that make people think differently. Abstracts are curious. abstract nude paintings like that one are curious because there's an appreciation for art, and there's a built-in, it's going to sound weird, but there's a built-in eroticism to it as well. And when you're looking at an inanimate object, it's weird to have that feeling, I guess. If you're looking at it, you find something attractive, but you find it erotically attractive, but it shouldn't really register that way. And that's a little bit taboo, right? So I like the fact that I have that sitting behind me because it makes people think differently, I find, and think a little bit more abstractly when I'm speaking with them on a Zoom or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree as well. I think it's because people outwardly looking in, they'll see guys like us, very well dressed, obviously ridiculously handsome, two most handsome dudes on the planet. They see us and they're like, yeah, must be easy for this guy. He's probably super boring, and then they actually will sit down with. How many times have you had this where you sit down with someone and they're always immensely surprised? Oh man, I thought that you would be completely different.
Often,
it's kind of showing yourself or a different facet of yourself, I guess, through an inanimate object as well. I think to some degree, I think there's that. It's just trying to show a different facet of the thousands of facets of your personality, and even it can be somewhat playful, I think. Especially with paintings and sort of interior design hints. It's like you can have something there, and it's very interesting to see how people take that one thing, right? Or you could kind of just put something so obviously in front of their face, and they wouldn't even notice it. They wouldn't notice it or see it until you point it out, and then they can't unsee it. I love doing it. I love doing it. That's super fun.
An interesting way to analogize that is looking at your personality as something that's malleable and changeable based on whomever you're interacting with, right? So for people at home watching this, what I do often when I meet people is that I try to gauge sort of where they're at and meet them at that level. So the discussion that I have with Michael is going to be different from a discussion that I have with John, is going to be different from a discussion that I have with Robert. And I'm going to speak differently. I'm going to talk about different things. I'm going to use different words, different language to make that communication more effective, right? And part of that is just by asking people questions. Michael, you're very good at this, and we develop a rapport based on that. And part of that is listening to the responses and then keying in to say, how can I deliver my personality, which is unique, in a way that resonates with the person that I'm sitting across the table from, or I'm meeting at a business function, or whatever the case may be at dinner. That part I find really unique and interesting. And it's a great talent for people to work on at home, because what you're going to learn is the skills of communication, the skills of persuasion, and you're going to start to learn how people operate and how people view the world, and be able to start pushing those buttons to get responses that you want, right? And that sounds manipulative, and it's not. It should be addressed in good faith, obviously. And you should be doing it with an intention to learn and help people and make them feel better about themselves. But it gives you a very unique skill to be able to dive in on somebody and say, hey, okay, I see where you're coming from, A, B, C, D, E. And they walk out of that, interaction and go, wow, that was awesome. I really like it.
I really, and that's always the end goal of it's like so many people see conversations as I need to win, this person needs to lose. For me, I extraordinarily strongly believe that every single conversation that you have in your life, whether it's even just in the fucking supermarket, it should always be win-win. The two people should walk away both with something. There are other times, however, where you can and probably should take a net loss on a conversation. Like, for example, if someone is in a very, let's say, difficult position, they've come to you for advice, you've given them advice, they've gone away, they then haven't taken your initial advice, and because of that, their life is now all fucked up. And they're coming back to you for advice. You need to kind of take a net negative or a net loss on your ego if you care about that person, obviously. Otherwise, it's just dude, what the fuck? To take that net loss on your ego, to be able to say, okay, look, we spoke about this, you know, etc. I mean, I'm getting into just so many nuances here, but it's really, I guess it comes down to sales. Sales is all about communication, because I could communicate anything to you, but unless I know what you want and I already have qualified you and I understand you, I can't sell you something. Like, if I'm going to sell you a pen, I need to know that first you have two hands to write with, right? Because otherwise there's no point in me even going and selling you a pen, because that's where things, I think, come across as very sort of disingenuous, especially in sales, when you haven't got to connect with that prospect, you don't know anything about them, and you're already trying to sort of ram something down their throat. Do you agree with that? And then what are your kind of thoughts on just sales in general, in so much as the perspective of the general populace around it?
Sales, I try to disqualify people rather than qualify them. At the end of the day, that's been my strategy ever since I've gotten into business, which is I don't want to take you as a client, and I'll take you if you're the right one, right? Most people, when they start in sales, it's a numbers game, and you go, I got to hit everybody and I'll take anything. And I did that a little bit when I started, and I learned that when you start taking anything, you get a lot of headaches and a lot of problems that are just a facet of the fact that the person is a huge pain in the ass to deal with, and it's not working, right? Yeah. They need a different level of service. They need a different service provider. Whatever the case may be, it's not working out. So now I just filter people out. So if someone's overly combative, if somebody wants to text me, texting is a great one. If I have a client that texts me at 7 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night, you get one warning. Don't text me again. I'm not doing this game. And next time, right? Maybe I lose some sales over it, but that's fine. I'm fine with that. There's little qualifiers like that I'm just not interested in partaking in this relationship anymore. And I'll say goodbye and leave it there. Works for business. It works for women. It works for trainers. You know, if you're boxing and you don't have a good relationship with your boxing trainer, that's really not going to go very far. If he's late all the time and you don't have, you don't get a full hour or 2 hours in, but rather you get an hour and a half, and that's not an efficient use of your time, get a new trainer. Problem solved.
Yep. It's just that, because it's the same thing with it's family, it's with friends, it's with business, it's with women, literally everything. Because I think it comes down to just the sense that so many people are trying to just please the other person, rather than, and this isn't selfish. I already can read the comments, and I can see some, but that's so selfish of you. Well, okay, it's your life. You have one of them. Do you really want to throw it away with trash fucking people?
It's not even, I mean, that's a good point. And it's not even necessarily that harsh, but there's that, the quote that you're the sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, that kind of thing, right? And at a certain point you realize, oh my God, that's true. And why, if I have time, my energy, my attention, and money, that's it in the world. Those are my currencies, right? And you can spend it or invest it. That's all you've got. You can spend your time or invest your time. You can spend your energy or invest it. Putting money in stocks versus spending it on, snowmobile. I'm in Canada, so I'll pick that. And I'm looking at snow. Energy, right? I can waste it doing nothing, or I can go to the gym. Attention, I can invest that in my family, or I can invest that in, or I can spend it on OnlyFans, right?
Yeah.
Money, stocks, or piss it away on something else. So you go through these things and you go, I have a spend or invest relationship with anything. If I'm supposed to be the sum of the 5 people who are most important to me, or 10 people, or whatever the case may be, that means I really need to tightly control and look at that network of people who I choose to surround myself with. And those are the ones that I really want to invest in a quality relationship in. So I might be okay spending a little bit of time with this person, but I really want to invest more with that one because I see that we work well together, that we see eye to eye on many issues, that we can speak the same thing and understand where each of us are coming from and their perspectives. And that helps a mutually assured growth together, right?
Absolutely.
And when you do that, you find that you're meeting people at the level that they want to be met at. You're communicating with them effectively. And I mean, you leave every single day and you go, wow, this is great. I got to invest my time with the people who I really care about. And the people who I don't care about are no longer, really within the circle of my life. So who cares?
Yeah.
It's not being selfish. It's just being choosy. It's recognizing that your time, energy, attention, and money has value, putting a value on it, and making people pay the price of admission, right?
Yep. Absolutely agree. And it comes down to, for me at least, to in so many different degrees, comes down to protecting your, not only just yourself on a day-by-day basis, but it's also future-proofing your life. Because if I know that the people that I'm working with in business, because as you well know, I got pretty fucked over this year business-wise. But now, with all of the guys that are on my sales team, which I think we're like 6 now, plus 1, 2, 3, 4 support guys, I now know that those guys, any business that I start from here on out, those guys are coming with me, because they will. And I much prefer to know that rather than to have, let's say, 20 guys or 40 guys that I know that when push comes to shove, they could dissipate into just thin air. I need people that I can rely on. And those are the people that I want to spend time with, that I want to build with, because there's this lone wolf mentality. I think with so many young men, especially, they're like, well, you know what? Fuck my parents. My parents don't believe in me. Fuck this ex. She called me a dick. She cheated on me and she left me. So you know what? Fuck everyone. I'll just go at this alone. It's a very easy way of just ensuring perpetual slavery in your mind and in life. And I think it's what really makes human experience is not the bad or the negative side of humanity. Like, for example, I've been stabbed, etc., etc. Those negative things actually don't outweigh those, would I call it formulas or accumulation? I don't know. But when 2 people collide and they're both at the same level and they're both honest and righteous and just simple from the start, cool, this is what I want, cool, this is what I want, cool, let's do this, whether that's in business or relationships, that's when something really beautiful can really take off, I think. And I think a lot of people just focus on those negative experiences rather than looking at the potential of having that. And in looking at those negative experiences, I think a lot of people, they steal that positivity and the good side away from humanity because they've had X, Y, or Z gay trauma, right?
I almost understand the lone wolf thing. Not because I buy into it as a productive thing, but I'm not sure how many regular, ordinary experiences there are with people in your geographic location that are positive anymore. I mean, it's probably the greatest push towards more online based communities that, or advertisement for online based communities. It's probably the best one that you can find, because I think for, the bulk of people, the bulk of men, especially today, they look at their peers and they go, these guys are losers. They have man caves and they're emasculated and their wife controls them. So not really what I want. They look at their parents who may be sick or may not be, the ideal role models too, with a lot of the sort of older, more traditional relationships being gone. Maybe their father has the man cave, right? I know some fathers who are in their 50s and 60s who have very elaborate man caves where you go, wow, really? Okay. And if you think about a younger person who's 20 years old growing up in this environment, you kind of go, if they're looking around in the world surrounding them, are there really that many role models and positive influences within their peer group, within teachers, within professors, within the business community even, which in and of itself has its own idiosyncrasies and sort of weird twists to it. Parents, uncles, aunts, etc. You look around at your family members and you kind of go, not many of these people are people who I would model my life after. Maybe there's a certain facet of a personality that you see in your uncle that you go, oh, I really like that. I should work on emulating that specific trait, right?
Yeah.
But not everything, because this guy's nuts. Or there's something in a friend, a best friend even, who maybe you see eye to eye with now, but you realize that this person's not really going anywhere and they don't have dreams and ambitions like you do. And as a young child, as a young man who's 18, 20, 25 years old, if you look around and all you see are people who you don't want to hitch your wagon along for the ride with, what do you do? And a lot of people's answer to that is, I'm a lone wolf, because I literally don't have anybody who I would trust to stand beside me. So I have to be, by default, I must be a lone wolf. And you're not a lone wolf. There's a lot of great people out there if you know where to look. There's wonderful communities out there if you know where to look for them, of people who will see eye to eye with you and really help in your growth, in your professionalism, in your career, in all facets of your life if you're looking in the right spots. But if you're just looking in Guelph, Ontario, you're not going to find that many people there, because it's a small town and not many people are going to have the type of insight that you're looking for and the type of mindset that you may have, right? So don't fall for the lone wolf trap. Just recognize that the people around you might not be worth having stand beside you, and you need to leave that mentality and move towards the future.
Yeah, 100%. I think that was so beautifully put. It's like there is a pack for everyone. Everyone has the potential to find the pack. Is it easy? No. I don't think it really ever has been. But now it's becoming easier and easier, especially with things moving more and more online. I mean, obviously we have like in real life meetups and stuff, but to a degree, I'm somewhat concerned the way in which this online culture thing is going, because if it's just online, okay, that's better than nothing. Sure, that's a given. But how far would that in itself go? Because is it just going to be now that you're, and I'm seeing this now just more and more, is it now going to be more the case that, okay, you're happy when you're sat down at the computer, but then when you get out into the real world, you're looking around at everyone with some kind of a vindictiveness, and I guess this just despair for humanity, which I also see a lot of people have, rather than looking at, again, what we were saying before, about having just win-win interactions with people. What do you think, like long-term, the implications of just those online lifestyle living kind of things, or just even with gaming, thinking about it, like a lot of these kids, they find, solace in people that they like online within, the gaming community, for example, or on Discord. But they're not constructive. And I think I'm really interested to see what you think long term. What's going to be the damage that's caused by that, especially for younger kids now?
For younger kids, the key is to connect with people where you can have mutually beneficial relationships and work together for something more, right? That can be online. That can be a combination of online and in person. You're going to be able to pick from a bigger pool online, and that by virtue of having a bigger pool, you're going to get bigger fish. I mean, at the end of the day, that's it. And if you can find that community that really supports you and emboldens you, that's a great thing, and it helps you. The angst thing is interesting because you see it with people who go, I really fit in with this community, but this community doesn't exist where I am. And there's some sort of judgmentalism to it, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the most important tools for people is being able to remove that judgment complex or that negative connotation where you just run into people who just aren't like you. It's not really your role to be judgmental. It's not really your role to be upset about this. They're just not like you, and that's okay. That's not a problem. You just deal with it and you go, okay, I can still have a pleasant conversation with this person. There's no point in getting upset because we don't see eye to eye, because I know they're not going to see eye to eye with me because I'm different. I'm, this over here, they're this over here. I'm, left wing, or I'm right wing, or, whatever. You're not going to see eye to eye. Does that mean that you have to have a combative existence where you're constantly arguing with each other? No, of course not. Have a pleasant conversation, avoid touchy subjects, and say, great, it was so nice to meet you. Have a wonderful day. Really had a nice time. Talk to you later. Yeah. Why would you be judgmental about that? It's silly. You can't expect everybody to agree with you.
I think it's egotistical on many, many different fronts, because it's like, who the fuck are you to, first and foremost, assume that you're right with everything that you're thinking, first and foremost. Secondly, to make your own self-importance that much deeper than every other humans on the planet. And thirdly, like you were perfectly saying, it comes down to why have a negative outlook and negative connotations on X specific people or group when you could just have a pleasant conversation, never speak to that person again in your life, have a much better day rather than getting into some kind of gay argument, because it's cortisol, the stress hormone, stays in your body for 7 hours. So the second that you stress yourself out and have some kind of a shitty conversation with someone and some kind of a discussion or argument, great. Now your hormones are fucked for 7 hours. Great. So now it's not only just those 3 minutes of conversation. Now it's your whole day is fucked, because you, rather than just lowering your ego and seeing the other person as for what they are, a human being. And if you were just seeing that, I think a lot of people miss the fact of, if you were that same human being and you've lived the exact life as they have, you do and think and be exactly the fucking same as they are, right? So, and vice versa. So I think it's an ego thing, personally. Do you agree, or do you think it's maybe there's other facets to it?
It's an engagement versus disengagement thing too. You can choose when to engage emotionally in a conversation versus disengage and keep things sort of at arm's length. And I don't think many people recognize that you can have a pleasant and positive conversation with someone, but not really be tied into the background that they don't believe in this, but you believe in that. And they have different viewpoints about X, Y, Z, but you think, people should wear a mask and other people shouldn't wear a mask. Why are you even getting into this conversation? What's the point? You don't need to dive in on these issues. I know that we've been told that, we should be having these debates in the public square with people who we just bump into on the street, but that's a recipe for disaster. I mean, you're just going to get punched. Why? You don't need to engage. Just tell people that they look good. Hey, you looking good today? How's it going? Yeah, this weather sucks. It's Canada. All right, talk to you later. Bye.
Yeah.
What's the point?
It's very, very simple. It's very simple. And I think it's kind of tribalism to some degree as well. It's like this tribe is here. This tribe is here because, and we don't see each other, but we know that each other are there. Mm-hmm. Therefore, I must conquer their fucking lands and kill them. And then the others are thinking, oh shit, they must be thinking the same that we're thinking. And then all of a sudden, rather than everyone just being peaceful and just going about the fucking day, now it's just, okay, cool. Everyone's at war. And it's just stupid. It's stupid. There's so many other things for you guys watching, especially you young guys that are like pissed off and angry with this whole feminist movement and all of that. I'm specifically speaking to you guys. There's so many other fucking things that you could be emotionally, and that should be more emotionally affected by, like the fact that you're nowhere near where you guys want to be and could and should be. So for you guys, stop looking at all of this, the smoke and mirrors. You need to be looking at the mirror at yourself is really the first thing I would suggest for those guys to do. What would you say to those guys? Because they feel, disincentivized or disenfranchised, rather, by this whole, there's feminism everywhere. You've got this whole movement and everything else coming up. What would you advise those kids?
I'm going to go back to problem versus opportunity. You have a situation now that is very unique. I saw a psychiatrist talking about, I'll address the feminism and not really feminism, but more just male-female dynamics part of it, because I saw a psychiatrist, it was on YouTube or something, I forget the guy's name, talking about how, pardon me?
Jordan Peterson, maybe?
No, it wasn't him. It was an unknown one. It wasn't Jordan Peterson. But he was talking about how the feminist movement and women becoming more competent and having a higher value than traditionally in terms of career and ambition and interpersonal male-female relationships, how that's driving polyamory. And the theory and the data, according to the psychiatrist, was that as women become more successful, they look to date across to people who are equal value to them or above, to people who are higher value. As women become more successful, what that means is that they're selecting from a smaller and smaller pool of men who are becoming relatively less successful than them. And therefore, their choices dwindle. And they're dwindling to the point that there are several successful and wonderful women competing for one guy. So there might be 3 or 4 or 5 or 10, it really depends on the level that you're at. From a male perspective, what this means is that there's a disaggregation between people who are within the dating pool and people who are outside of the dating pool. And the people who are outside, the population there is growing. And that may be the bottom 60% of the dating pool for men, which means that you need to work towards being in the top. So if you're feeling upset about feminism, if you're feeling upset about any of these sort of issues, like Michael is saying, look in the mirror and say, look, I've got responsibility over the situation. My role is to be top decile, so top 10% in everything that I do. So I'm going to work out hard. I'm going to have a good diet. I'm going to be in the top decile of physique. Does that mean that you need to be ripped? No. It just means that you need to be able, sadly in America, means that you need to be able to do like 30 push-ups, and that puts you pretty close. Get a little bit better than that, though.
Yeah, I think in America, it's just don't be a fat slob now. And then you're in top like 3%. So
yeah, get fit, get active, join a gym, go boxing, do Muay Thai, do jiu-jitsu, do something that's a combat sport that trains you a bit in your mind, as well as in your physical body. Invest in relationships that you care about, in those 10 people that you're supposed to be the grand total sum of. Invest in those, and then whoosh, goodbye to the other people who cause outsized amounts of drama and headaches in your life, right? Important. Invest in relationships with women that you really like, that you can see a future with. Invest in those. With someone who you don't see a future with, time to leave, right? It doesn't need to be to the point where you're arguing with each other, but if you say, I don't really see this working, that's the time to go. You don't need to get into fights. Just say, this has been fun, but I think that we're at a different point in our lives now. And, here's your stuff. If I could get those couple of things back, that would be great. But if you want to throw them off a balcony or something, that's perfectly fine too. And call it a day. And in terms of money, it's investing in finding a job, if you're young, that trains you in how to deal with issues that are important and how to deal with work that's important, and starts to give you a specialization in something. From there, you need to start working on a side business that helps to counteract that specialization and build on it. And at a certain point, when that side business gets big enough, you can pull the plug and become a self-employed entrepreneur and make way more money, because you know that if you're an employee, the company is making money off of you. You can just outsource that work to yourself and make 2 or 3 times as much money doing exactly the same amount of work that you're doing in the first place, because that's how much the company that you're working for is billing you out for. So, that's the path. If you're 20, aim for that by age 30 or 25.
Yeah, I definitely go with 25, especially the way that things are moving at the minute. I think 25, you guys really need to move with some speed. And a lot of people, I don't think I've ever touched on this, but I've, for many, many years, probably 11 years or so plus, I have always said that essentially any company, to some which way, is just a recruitment, an outsourcing agency, right? And that's essentially what they're doing. That any business that you are working for, they're outsourcing you for the client. So what you need to realize as the employee is, hold on a second, why the fuck am I doing it for these guys when there's clients paying them because I have a salary? Fuck this. Let me just go, you could do, well, you could even go freelance. Freelancing is I don't know why it's so negatively looked at just in general, but freelancing holds a massive opportunities.
And you can extract value. You can extract value from that. A lot of, I think I know where you're coming from with why it's looked down on. It's looked down on from a risk perspective, because the way that banks view things is that if somebody has a stable job working for the airline, and they've been working there for 10 years, this is somehow stable. But in reality, the airline could fire them tomorrow and they're screwed. They have to find a job somewhere else. And maybe all the airlines are firing people, and then they're really screwed. And that money is gone. Banks don't do risk assessment well. If that same person is a freelancer and working for 20 clients, if one client or even 5 clients tells them to go away, they still have 15 left. They still have good income.
Yeah.
So,
and the possibility to get more, right?
Yeah, and the possibility to go work harder and invest in marketing, invest in different efforts to get more, charge more, and have fun and a more balanced lifestyle doing it.
Yeah, because what's essentially the other option is flatline or to be an employee, it's either you're going to flatline and stay at the same salaried level. I'm not specifically wanting to just focus on salary. I always want people to focus way more on the freedom to be able to do what the fuck you want to do and say no to the clients that you don't want to work with, and say no to Sally, the fucking HR manager, who's a bitch with pink hair that changes every couple of days. That for me is always what everyone should be aiming for. But initially the only other option is, okay, fine, let's say that the airline or whatever, your job does sack you. Okay, cool. Now what are you going to do? Well, shit, now you need money because you've got a mortgage to pay, you've got bills to pay, you've got kids to look after and care for. So now, not only do you, or would you be looking at the same level or position, but now we're in a recession. So now all of these higher tier people that are getting laid off, well, guess what? They're going for the same position that you guys will be as well. So now you're just getting pushed down even lower, and now you're fucked. It's for me, I understand why it needs to work, obviously, us having businesses. But my advice for anyone is not to be a fucking employee. Just don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, there's value to getting the training if you need it for that specific niche or industry. There's value there. Even when I was in university in the summertime, I worked at a golf course. This is a great spot, actually. If you want to learn how professionals work and how the more elite levels of society work and converse, work bag drop at a private members golf course.
Yeah.
You're going to learn a lot about how people converse with each other, about how business is done. You're going to recognize traits in people that you wouldn't ordinarily bump into because you're dealing with primarily successful people all day. And you're going to learn what makes them tick, how can I light them up, and how can I communicate with them in a way that makes sense to them. Because it's not going to be the same as some 18-year-old schmuck who's your friend. It's going to be very different because you're dealing with a 40-year-old who's making $1.5 million per year, and time is money. And you're going to learn, how can I light them up quickly and get them to like me and give me a tip or, whatever, enjoy the conversation at least and send them on their way and give them a positive experience. That is something that can be learned quite quickly working in something like that and can be applied for the rest of your life. Because if you can do that, I mean, sky's the limit.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, do you guys have work experience placements, like when you're like 10 years old?
You can. You don't run into it too much, but you can.
So I don't know.
Younger though.
I don't know about now per se, but in the UK, it used to be mandatory for a lot of public schools to send, I think it was like 10, it must have been 10 or 11 or something like that. And you would have to go and find a job placement that you would work for or work at for, I think it was 2 weeks or something like that, completely for free. Like, cool. They could pay you if they wanted to. I was one of the lucky ones. I went to a golf driving range, and the amount of shit that I learned from people there, because of course it's basically like where, for you guys that don't know, it's where you go to practice golf. And I learned so much shit within 2 weeks about how my life was so different to theirs and so young that I think propelled me a lot, actually. So I certainly would advise you to do exactly as Ryan's saying. And that was just in a driving range. But it's getting yourself as a young person ideally as close to the higher echelons of society as soon as possible, because it's compound interest, I guess. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. The earlier you start, the better you'll be.
Yeah. So that would be also very much my advice. 100%. 100%. And as passing remarks, because I know that you've got a ton of things to do. I've got the same as well. So as some passing remarks, what would you say to because the main demographic I've seen now is between 20 to 26 year old men. What other passing pieces of advice would you say to add to them?
That's a lot.
It's a hell of a lot. And we've covered a shit ton too.
We're entering into a new year, right? So 2023, it's a big year. We're looking at the world differently now. Things, if you're listening to the news, if you're listening to mainstream media, even just reading the tea leaves of the economy, inflation, interest rates, companies laying people off, it looks bad, right? Guess what? This is all good news. 2023 is going to be a big year for many reasons, but most of all, because when people are getting smoked, that's the best time that you can invest in things. That's the best time that you can prosper. And that's really the time where you can see exponential growth in your life, right? So if you start putting in the effort now to start getting into better shape, to start wearing nicer clothes, to start investing in relationships that are important, putting yourself closer to higher net worth individuals, and starting to look and perceive life through their eyes. Because as a high net worth individual, I like recessions because you can just go and buy stuff for less money. It's on sale and it'll go up in value over time. So perfect. Start investing in those things. Look at a career in entrepreneurism. It doesn't really matter what it is as long as it pays and pays well. It could be freelancing. It could be drop shipping, I guess. I mean, I think that's like yesterday's news. That was yesterday's news yesterday.
It's still working super well. We have so many guys.
Okay, so there you go. So drop shipping, freelancing, whatever you can do at home in your spare time. Turn off the TV, cancel your Netflix subscription, cancel any of that crap that you subscribed for that just fills time aimlessly for no real purpose, and put that time into something productive. Do some bicep curls, or work on your business, or reach out to somebody who matters to you and start lighting people up along the way. And what you're going to notice is that you're going to have a positive spiral upwards, and it's going to make you way more optimistic about life. And it's going to open you up to opportunities in 2023 that you never thought were possible. Start doing that now. It's December 27th. You have 4 days. Buckle up. It's going to be a lot of fun, and get ready for a wonderful, wonderful year and a big change in your perception.
Hey, fucking man. We can't add. I mean, there's so many other small things that we can always come up with to that, because you and I just bounce so well off of each other. And this is why doing this with you is always so fun, man. So
I love it. Thank you so much for having me back again. I really appreciate it.
Well, there'll be a round 3. And now I'm starting to think, do we have to do like a weekly or something? But
that'd be fun.
It would be fun. It's trying to fit us both in with the time zones and the timing and everything else. But we'll work on something. We'll have to do something. That's for sure. But brother, appreciate your time as always. Genuinely, thank you so much, because I know you've got the kids running around like crazy and everything else going on in the background. So get back to being with them and to working. And until then, I will see you on the next one, brother.
I look forward to it. Thank you so much, and we'll chat soon.
All right.